Robert Eggers' take on the classic tale of NOSFERATU is a deeply psychological and atmospheric horror experience that explores themes of loneliness, despair, and sexual repression, all of which intertwine, dancing together in the most sensual embrace to create a haunting meditation on human vulnerability. By emphasizing these elements, Eggers crafts a story that is not only terrifying, but also profoundly tragic and visually captivating. Before we begin, this video is sponsored by Plex. For more information, stick around after the video to learn how to corral your movies, TV shows, and music from all your streaming services into one place. Stop scrolling, start streaming, get Plex. A tragic loneliness falls as a center theme to NOSFERATU, manifesting both in individual characters and in the broader atmosphere of Wisburg. The town itself feels almost ghostly, drenched in shadows and an eerie stillness that suggests emotional and psychological isolation. Ellen is a key figure in this exploration of loneliness. She is emotionally neglected in her marriage to Thomas Hutter, whose ambitious nature leaves her feeling unseen. Despite his apparent love for her, there is a sense that he does not truly understand her inner turmoil. This emotional disconnect makes her susceptible to the lure of Count Orlok, whose monstrous presence ironically acknowledges her in a way her husband does not. Orlok himself is a deeply lonely figure. Unlike many depictions of vampires as seductive or aristocratic, Eggers' Orlok is grotesque and tragic. He is an outcast, neither fully alive nor dead, forever lurking on the outskirts of human society. His desire for Ellen is not just predatory, it is also a desperate attempt to connect, to break the curse of his isolation. In this way, Orlok is a mirror of Ellen's own solitude, and their doomed relationship becomes an extension of her own unfulfilled longing. Ellen is not just a woman ensnared by a vampire, but someone carrying the burden of depression, isolation, and inner torment. The influence of Orlok in her life can be read not only as a supernatural affliction, but also a manifestation of the deeper sadness she already carries. The film uses horror as a metaphor for mental illness, where the presence of Orlok serves as an externalization of Helen's internal struggle. From the beginning, Ellen is depicted as deeply melancholic, her demeanor subdued and distant, even in moments that should be filled with love. There is a weight pressing down on her. Her sadness is not overtly discussed by those around her, much like how mental illness was often ignored or misunderstood in the 19th century. Instead, it is something she carries alone, her internal suffering unnoticed or dismissed. In this way, NOSFERATU captures the historical tendency to mask depression as something external, be it a spiritual affliction, a curse, or in this case, the influence of a vampire. Ellen is not believed when she begins to change, and those around her assume her declining state is due to Orlok's presence, rather than an internal battle she has been waging long before his arrival. The film visually reinforces this through its use of oppressive, dimly lit spaces, where Ellen often appears small, swallowed by her surroundings. Even before Orlok physically enters her life, shadows seem to loom around her, suggesting that the monster was always there, waiting to consume her. The film's overwhelming sense of despair comes from its fatalistic tone. There's a feeling that no matter what the characters do, they are doomed. This is reflected in Ellen's arc. Her growing attraction to Orlok is not presented as choice, but as something inevitable, a force greater than her will, She knows that allowing him into her life is a form of self-destruction, yet she is somewhat powerless to resist. Rather than being purely an external force, Orlok functions as an embodiment of Ellen's depression, something that lingers, feeds off her, and isolates her from the world. The way he watches her from a distance before making his presence fully known reflects the creeping nature of mental illness, how it builds slowly, wrapping itself around the mind before it fully consumes. His attacks on Ellen are as much psychological as they are physical. Her presence does not just drain her life force, it deepens her despair, making her question her own reality. This aligns with the way depression warps perception, making one feel as though they are doomed, powerless to escape. Ellen's interactions with Orlok are intimate, yet deeply unsettling. His hold over her is not merely about supernatural domination, but about how depression itself takes control, leading her further into isolation, convincing her that she is unworthy of joy or freedom. His gaze becomes a mirror, reflecting back the darkness she already carries inside. The town of Wisburg itself suffers from a collective despair. The arrival of Orlok brings plague, which serves as a metaphor for the existential dread. As sickness spreads, so does hopelessness, reinforcing the idea that death is inescapable. This feeling of doom is central to German expressionist horror, from which NOSFERATU draws heavy inspiration. Winsburg becomes a town of the damned, trapped in a nightmare from which there is no waking. Orlok's presence acts as a catalyst for despair, exposing the underlying emptiness in people's lives. While the town initially sees itself as a civilized society, his influence reveals its fragility. People turn on each other, succumb to madness, and ultimately fall into a state of helplessness. One of the most fascinating aspects of NOSFERATU is how it frames Orlok's attack on Ellen as both horrific and seductive. This plays into the film's broader theme of sexual repression, particularly in the ways Ellen's desires are demonized by both society and herself. Ellen, as a woman in the 19th century society, is expected to be pure, dutiful, and restrained. Her role as a wife is defined not by her own needs, but by her obligation to her husband. However, her encounter with Orlok awakens something in her, a dark, unspoken yearning. Unlike Thomas, Orlok does not treat her as delicate or distant. He consumes her with an intensity that is both terrifying and intoxicating. Orlok as a vampire represents taboo desire, the forbidden, the monstrous, the uncontrollable. His feeding on Ellen is undeniably sexual, a metaphor for a passion that cannot be expressed in normal society. The way she reacts to him is not just fear. There's a deep internal conflict between her terror and her longing. This dynamic echoes the Victorian fear of female sexuality, where desire was often framed as something unnatural or dangerous. The idea that a woman might want something beyond the safety of marriage was threatening, and the vampire, a creature of seduction and destruction, became a perfect symbol for that anxiety. Just as Wisborg fails to understand the true nature of Orlok, it also fails Ellen. Her suffering is not met with compassion, but with confusion or fear. She is treated as a woman who is simply fragile, overtaken by hysteria, an all too common historical diagnosis for women experiencing real emotional distress. Her husband Thomas, while well-meaning, does not see her pain for what it truly is. He believes that if he can rid their lives of Orlok, everything will return to normal, never realizing that Ellen's suffering predates the vampire's arrival. This reflects how loved ones often misunderstand depression, assuming that if an external problem is removed, the person will be cured, rather than recognizing the deeper internal wounds. The town's descent into madness and paranoia mirrors the way societies have historically treated mental illness, not with understanding, but with fear, suspicion, and avoidance. The deaths caused by Orlok's plague could be read as a metaphor for how untreated mental illness spreads. affecting not just the individual, but those around them. Ellen's decision to offer herself to Orlok can be seen as both an act of surrender and of agency. On one hand, it represents the way depression can convince a person that they are beyond saving, that they have succumbed to the darkness. She willingly invites Orlok in, a moment that feels both tragic and inevitable. However, this moment is also one of control. Throughout the film, Ellen is at the mercy of societal expectations, of her marriage, of Orlok's looming presence. But in choosing to face him directly, she reclaims a part of herself. In this sense, her final act can be seen as both a reflection of depression's consuming nature and a moment of defiance. Her death is not just framed as a traditional victory. While she rids the town of Orlok, she does not survive to see the aftermath. This enforces the film's bleak view of mental illness, how those who struggle often fight alone, unseen, their battles only acknowledged in their absence. Egger's NOSFERATU drapes its narrative in the veil of the supernatural, but at its heart, it is a profoundly psychological film. Ellen's story is not just about a woman preyed upon by a vampire, but about someone struggling against an internal darkness that no one else fully understands. By framing Orlok as a manifestation of Ellen's depression, the film offers a haunting exploration of how mental illness isolates, consumes, and ultimately reshapes a person's reality. Her tragedy is that of many who have suffered in silence, of being misunderstood, dismissed, and left to fight a battle that often cannot be seen. The film does not offer easy answers or comforting resolution. Instead, it lingers, much like depression itself, a shadow stretching across time, waiting, watching, never truly gone. Ultimately, Ellen's fate is tragic because she is punished for her desires. She does not truly choose Orlok, yet she is held responsible for his destruction. In sacrificing herself, she both submits and overcomes her repression. Yet her death suggests that such a release comes at an unbearable cost. Egger's NOSFERATU is not just about a vampire. It is about the universal human experience of wanting more than what we are allowed to have. Loneliness, despair, and sexual repression are not just individual struggles. They are societal forces that shape how we live and suffer. Ellen, Orlok, and the town of Wisburg all become victims of these themes in different ways. Ellen is trapped by expectations, Orlok by his monstrous nature, and Wisburg for its own unwillingness to confront darkness. The film's horror does not come from jump scares or gore, but from the slow realization that these characters were doomed long before Orlok arrived. In the end, NOSFERATU leaves us with the unsettling notion that the real monster is not the vampire at all. It is the fear of our own desires, the loneliness we refuse to acknowledge, and the despair that lingers in the spaces we dare not look. Managing the overwhelming number of streaming services that we all subscribe to can be a nightmare, making us wish for some sort of one-stop destination for all of our movies, TV shows, and music. Well, thankfully, Plex has the answer, bringing together free ad-supported movies, shows, and live TV with the power to search and add to your watch list any title ever made, no matter which streaming service it's on. Plex keeps everything in one place, even for theater releases. Discover more and search faster by customizing your experience. Add friends, share thoughts, and find your next binge-worthy title. Track your favorite actors with Discover credits. See all their movies and shows in one place. Stream your own movies, TV shows, music, and photos anywhere on any device. And best of all, Plex is a free streaming app for everyone, supported by ads that help bring you content from partners like Lionsgate, AMC, and even A24. Stream instantly from your computer, phone, tablet, game console, smart TV, or streaming media player. While you don't need an account to use Plex, Signing up does give you extra benefits, such as your own universal watch list, the ability to customize search results, seamlessly watching across all devices, and more. And if you want to unlock even more incredible features, consider joining Plex Pass, Plex's premium subscription, which gives power users advanced features for managing personal media libraries. Just follow the link down in the description today to join more than 17 million users worldwide who trust Plex as their entertainment concierge, helping them discover, organize, and enjoy the best content across all of their favorite platforms. Stop scrolling, start streaming, get Plex. That's going to be all for this one. I hope you enjoyed this discussion about NOSFERATU. I actually didn't get to see this film in theaters, so it took until getting the Blu-ray to be able to check it out and really explore it for myself. This is a rare one that I was able to pull so much from just from watching it the one time. Normally I have to sit with these things for a long time and let the ideas ruminate, but this one really grabbed me. If you haven't checked this one out, sorry for spoiling so much for you, but if you've seen the original NOSFERATU, you probably know what you're walking into. I've put a link down in the description on where you can get a copy. This is one everyone should have in their collection. Basically, all of Robert Eggers' work is worth collecting. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe for more content. Help us get those watch hours up. If you want to support the channel, we do have a Patreon. And we do have something else in the works that is going to give you a different way of supporting the channel that I think you're really going to like, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, stay safe, beware the shadow of the vampire, and as always, thanks for watching.